I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome those who are in attendance. We'll have our opening ceremonies. Our Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilmember Vanderwood, and our prayer will be offered by Councilmember Dixon.
Will have everyone stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, as we come before thee on this city council evening, we are so grateful for the many blessings we have. We are grateful for the country in which we live and for the city that we love. We ask thee at this time, Father, to please bless us with the things that we stand in need of, including rain. Please bless the places back east where they have too much, and please help us to be able to have the rain that we need to take care of our yards and our crops. Also, Father, please bless us with the pandemic. Please help us to know and do those things that we need to do in order to get over it so that we can move on. Please bless us with the things that thou seest that we stand in need of. And please bless those who fight for our country. Please keep them safe from harm as they are far away from their families. And please bless those families who are struggling with loss at this time. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Rob and Kim. We'll move on to agenda item 3, public presentation. Where residents attending this meeting will be allotted 2 minutes to express a concern or ask a question about any issue that is not on the agenda. No action can or will be taken on any issue that is presented. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward at this time? And just for information of those who are here for the public hearing, that's actually item 8, so you won't come up at this time. But.
Just one more notice before on this. I'll be looking to see why these monitors are just old school snow. So if I jump in and out, please understand that.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, action on consent agenda. We have the city council meeting minutes from the meeting held on August 18th. Please make a note of that for whoever makes the motion. B is a special board of canvassers meeting minutes on August 24th. C, Gardner Engineering invoices totaling $28,233. And D, advanced paving and construction, and invoicing the amount of $109,000, $109,248.74. That one is for chip seal.
Move to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, and D with a correction on A of meeting minutes for August 18th, 2021.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Nina?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Kim?
Aye.
Randy?
Aye.
Motion carries. We're on item 5, action on planning commission meeting recommendations. A, preliminary subdivision approval for Kenworth subdivision at 1750 South, 1350 West. Mike Mckay.
Is Mike here? I don't see him. He was planning to come to introduce this. This was an adjustment to the subdivision to clean up access for trail and such. It doesn't expand it any, but just a minor adjustment. I know he was planning to come here, so if we wanted to just table that and to see if he shows up, otherwise we'll just table it to next meeting when he can appear.
Entertain a motion to table?
I'll make a motion to table the preliminary subdivision approval for Kenworth subdivision at 1750 South, 1350 West.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the item's tabled, and Matt, I suppose you'll let us know if he sneaks in.
Yes.
I don't know who it is. Okay, item 6, discussion and possible action on week of service, Wilson Fourth Ward proposal. Mark Randall, it looks like.
Mark,
Is that microphone on? Do we know?
hold on just a second. No.
We can, but nobody else can.
I-
Well, you forgot to turn it on.
Okay.
There we are.
Oh, look, now it's flashing. Okay.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
Oh, you have no idea. This is so much better. Wow. What a difference a day makes. Anyhow, so the Wilson Fourth Ward, in their review of opportunities to do some kind of community service project, it was brought up in our ward council about the finding something that would bring together a large group of people. And I'll admit that I made the statement that we could all go over and get a paintbrush and paint some fencing and chutes at the rodeo grounds. And lo and behold, that's what they jumped on. And so you should have some information. Boy, that's loud. Well, okay, you should have some information there. The proposal is, and it's a week-long activity. We're scheduling from 6 to 9 each night through the Monday through Friday, and then Saturday from 6 a.m. to 12 noon, with the ward providing lunch. And then there's a couple of other businesses that have taken on some of the projects within this project. And so we're just seeking your blessing and a little bit of cash in lieu of the project, so that, and I should make mention too that I've visited with Brock and Matt regarding the project. They do have some extra paint, so they've got about 15 gallons of paint left over, and so that should be between $400 and $600 worth of savings in that process. So anyway, we're looking at approximately $2,500, $2,600 in funds. Whether we use that all up or not is hard to say. I calculated everything based upon went over and did some painting and some color matching and some different things. And by basis of how much there is to do, I figured about 600 labor hours to accomplish this task. Now, having said that, there's more to this. After I went and walked through today with Garrett, there's a lot more challenges, and we'll address them as we go through this process. Part of it will be to assess some of the damages that the soil has created on some of the chute rigging and posts and things because of the rust and corrosion and things that have taken place. So we're going to assess that with pictures that we will provide back to the council, so that you can kind of get an idea of what some of the preservation requirements will be going forward. So I don't know if you've been over there lately. There's a strap holding one of the chutes, and that's to keep it because they're pinching in, and so they need to have some fixing. But I think we can do this over a period of time. Anyway, the scope of this is mostly to refurbish, clean up the grounds, pull away a lot of the soil and dirt and stuff that has built up over the years, do some repair work in the registration booth and in the announcer's booth. And so that's kind of a real broad overview. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to address them as I see fit or know what I'm talking about.
I'm sure the biggest question, and Matt, you can probably answer this, and that is the funding. But before you get to that, Mark, I just want to thank you for this project, because our arena is a crown jewel, and we want to do all that we can to keep it up and make it a usable and pleasing place. So
Just in time for our fall rodeo, too.
exactly.
Well, and I think there's a lot of other, looking at it and hanging out there for the last week, I think there's a lot of things that can be done that we don't do. There's projects from some of the posse groups and the 4-H groups and things that could be coordinated as well, and a little bit more community use. I don't know if you're familiar with the Chrysalis. It's an adult daycare center up in my neck of the woods up in the industrial park. And as I was watching some of the people walk around the street there, I thinking, boy, wouldn't it be nice if they had just a day out of the week where they could go down there and somebody would provide a couple of horses and they could just climb on and lead them around the thing and take them back. I mean, I don't know. These are just things that I'm thinking would be kind of a nice thing. But anyway.
Okay, Matt, now I'll let you answer my question.
Yeah. So from the staff report, and first of all, when we met with them, we've been doing so many things for the week of service. I just wanted to make sure that our staff wasn't overloaded and we could provide them the attention. As we had Brock meet with Mark, they were very impressed with the organization and the idea that he'd be spacing it over and it could be self-directed work, so we wouldn't have to have major staff impact. We will have to power wash some of those areas that they'll be painting, and they're already replacing some of the plywood that's there. They just decided, hey, if we got people painting, let's go ahead and jump in and make this look shiny. As far as the funding on it, we're looking at in between $2,000 and $2,600 based on the paint that we have available here, and maybe giving us a little slack based on some of these other factors that have been discovered. There's a couple different places we can pull this from. We can pull it from Parks and Rec maintenance and operations. A little bit hesitant about that just because of some of the drought conditions that we have to deal with as far as reseeding and such. And we've already pulled some of that for some of the Previdel and other park improvements that we're doing from the day of service. The other option is the Community Ramp Grant Fund, which we're already committing quite a bit for Arts Council and some of the, for the mural that's happening that week. Still want to keep that flexibility. The other thing is to possibly pull it from the Council Contingency Fund. This would be the first time we pull from that. You have $20,000 in there. If that's where you'd like to designate, we could do that, and it doesn't impact other budget line items that might be used for other things.
So, Matt, under the community ramp fund that we gave already, how much is left in there? Is there a balance in there?
Yes, so we usually use that in some ways for refreshing playground equipment and some other things there. Currently, we have $5,000 committed to the Arts Council, which will largely be going to the Evening of Art this next month. We have just under $2,500 committed for the mural that we'll be looking at. So you're looking about half of that $12,500 has been committed to events. I would like to keep some of that community ramp grant for possible Arts Council event in the spring, and some other impacts for parks improvements around the city.
My preference is not to take it from the contingency fund. I don't think this is a contingent. I think we should save those funds for when we have a truly need for a contingent. This is a great project, but I don't know that it pulls from our contingency fund. Can we split that so we can take a portion of it from the operations and maintenance budget and a portion of it from the ramp grant funds?
Definitely. So this is a budgetary decision, so it's something the council has discretion on.
Okay.
So if we split it down the middle and take $1,300 from each?
Definitely. Could do that. We can work with that.
Mark, do you have a timeline of when you would know what the extra cost might be? You said that you came across some other issues. Do you have an idea of when you might know what those extra costs are?
The other issues, I don't think that while we will do some significant repairs, there will be some that we will address as far as letting the council know, and the rec department as well. But initially, we're going to start with only a small. So we have the 15 gallons, and we'll supplement it with some white, and we're not, we anticipated 100 rollers, but I'm going to start with 50, because, you know, all these people tell you they're going to come and help, you know, all these groups, and they say, yep, and yet I haven't got a phone call one yet, you know, about when they want to schedule their time. So I'm starting with about half of what we initially, as far as paint supplies and materials and things of that nature. We'll make a couple of changes. I talked with Brush Brothers. They're gonna paint out the registration booth, and we talked about putting. So you've got a counter type thing that's been broken, and we're gonna replace that. We were gonna redo the wood that was on the inside, the lower counter, but I talked with Utmost Ironworks, and they says, you know, let's not put wood back in there. They want to put an aluminum cap over the top of it, and they're going to donate that. So we've got things that are floating back and forth. Brush Brothers going to come in and spray that out for nothing. And so we've got these little things that are creeping in, so we should keep this well below the $2,000 mark. That's my anticipation.
Okay, well, I just want to say this is a really great project. Thank you for bringing it to the council. As the mayor said, the rodeo is really the crown jewel. Is that what you referred to it as for the city? And seeing us invest in that sends that message to the residents as well. So,
and I would tell you that there's because and so I've had this discussion with a couple of people already. Yes, we can get 3 guys with airless paint sprayers and go in there and do this in a day. But that doesn't bring the community together as I want it.
absolutely.
Everybody needs to use a roller and a brush, and you need to learn how to do it.
That's right.
And so we learn to talk to one another. Anyway,
I really like too that it's with the Week of Remembrance, and I think that's very important for these kids who have no idea of, you know, what happened 20 years ago. And so
totally agree.
I think that is an awesome idea. So with that being said, I move.
Hang on.
This-
Oh,
there's-
hang on.
sorry.
I'm not done.
This is-
Something happened.
Relax, Kim. We'll get to. Hey, so you got some metal repair that needs to be done too?
I'm sorry?
Any metal repair? You say there's some rusting areas out?
Well, so what you do when you, so I went over and spent a little bit of time with Garrett, because I don't know a lot about rodeo equipment, chutes and stuff. So the posts for the chutes are not anchored in concrete. I think they're anchored in the ground, and then there's a bar that goes across that's in the soil. Over time, they get, and you'll see some spots where they've started to rust out. And so what's happening in part of this process is the chutes have a kind of I don't even know what to say. It's like a door frame. And what's happening to this door frame, and it's supposed to keep it straight, but with this rusting and stuff, the door frames are tweaking like this, and so they can't get the chute gates open. So if you look at one of them on the very south end, they put a big strap on there and strapped it back to the horse rail so that they can pull it back apart. So they're just little things, you know, that just need to be fixed. I mean, it's just a matter of just fixing them. There's a lot of gates that won't close anymore because some bull decided he was going to, you know, rearrange the furniture. And so like maybe you do this gate, you know, get a jack and force it around or whatever, or maybe cut it and fit something back into it to make it fit better. So there's all those little, yes, metal projects. But the scope of this is not to get involved in that. It's to assess that, do the painting, we're going to take a tractor and pull everything back away from all the posts and stuff to kind of get an idea of how extensive the rust has gone and how corroded things are. To get an idea, we'll still paint, refurbish everything, but give the council an idea and the rec department, well, here's some of the pictures that we found and here's some of the concerns. Eventually, you're going to have to address them.
Yeah. So there's areas usually when they have the chutes like that and they start to get weak with rust, it becomes a safety issue.
I would think so.
So I'd be happy to come over and help with that to see if we could get some metal and figure out what the assessment is. And I've got the welder and all the stuff that we could help with that.
Absolutely.
The reason for that, and that's why I was asking before Kim jumped in to make it happen, was that it'd be nice to fix it first, and then before we paint it, because when you heat stuff up, it's gonna have to be repainted again. So if we can try and do some of that repair, that would be helpful probably to get that done. But
so I'll
get with you. I'll get
I
with
would
you.
say the goal here is on Saturday and Monday to uncover as much as we can around the shoot areas and the catwalk and things. So after the holiday's over, if you're driving around, stop in. So the evening times are 6 to 9. There's the scheduled times for the activities for people to come and serve. But we'll have everything pulled away. Well, let me rephrase that. We hope to have everything pulled away and be able to assess some of that to see where we really need some help.
And no offense, Guy. Just
You
saying.
going? Hey,
Can help you
okay.
with that.
I think that'll work.
My preference is to use the ramp grant money for this. I don't believe the Arts Council is going to use nearly what they have. So I'm happy to use the ramp money.
You think that the Arts Council doesn't need $5,000 for the next 12 months? Or
Well,
are
they
you
might, but
thinking-
Matt was talking
Oh,
about
that's right.
additional.
There's
But for this
extra.
event, I'm guessing they're not going to hit that number. So that's my opinion, but you guys wanted to split, so.
You're the Arts Council.
You are the expert.
Well-
Art.
Oh, no.
I see
He's
Alan
on,
tonight. You
so-
want me to ask Alan what he's got in mind?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, are we all good? Everyone okay? I was just so excited to give away our money.
I appreciate your enthusiasm for this. That's
Wait,
great.
yes, we all do.
All right, if we're all good, then I move that we approve the service project for the Week of Remembrance at, $2,600 to be taken from the Community Ramp Fund.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries.
Thank you very
so
much.
That's
Thank you.
awesome.
I appreciate that. And I want to say you saved me a lot of money because I always thought I had to go get hearing aids, but today I can hear every one of you clearly.
I am
Thank
so
you.
glad.
And you look beautiful, by the way.
And there's no squills or,
Mark,
Thank
if,
you.
Funny
if you need
noises.
volunteers for that, let's talk.
Well, we're going to post it on the West Haven page and then in the ward page, Facebook
Okay.
page. And we'll just keep, we've got a 4-H group that says they're going to come. We know that we've got 2 activity nights for the ward youth to come over and do some things. So, and I've got a group coming on Saturday. So I think we'll be okay.
Okay.
It's just, we'll have to wait and see. And, here's my problem. Sometimes kids can get carried away with painting, and I don't know how many runs we're going to have, so I'm worried. Anyway,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Mark.
Okay, we're on item 7, presentation of our Community Development Director, Sheri Fippen.
All right, Sheri, would you mind stepping up? And I'm going to do the introduction from here. I jokingly said I'll extol all her glory and her achievements, and she asked for a walk-off song as she came down, but I didn't have time to arrange the smoke machine as she requested. So this is Sheri Fippen. She has been hired as our new Community Development Director. Sheri has over 15 years of planning experience with several different cities, mainly up in Cache County area, with her most recent stint with city planning as a contracted city planner for South Weber. She has also been a congressional, what's the proper title? The district
I think
liaison.
I've had 4 different job titles
Yeah.
there, but district liaison, I think
Yes.
is what's on my business
So
card.
she was originally hired on by Rob Bishop at the first of 2020, and having dealt with federal positions when they rolled over to Blake Moore, it's a credit to her tenacity and her work ethic. Usually, you don't have people stay on. They wipe out and start their whole new offices. She was held on and continued to support and represent Blake Moore as the district liaison. She's great. All of her references talked about her eye for detail and coming prepared and really having a good manner of communicating both with councils, with planning commissions, and residents in a very thoughtful and direct way. And one of the things that our city attorney who sat in on the interview panels was that Sheri would probably work any of the other candidates under, outwork them in any way. And that was very apparent with some of the homework assignments we gave her. And we're excited for her experience in looking at code, helping update those, as well as trying to right-size the approach with some of the goals that the city council has for continuing development and future considerations for the city. So I wanted to bring Sheri up. Her start date is the 7th, so next Tuesday. We brought her in and had lunch with the community development group, the building officials and such, and they all took a shine to her and came back and chatted as she told some stories about congressmen and Nibley and other areas. So wanted to give the council an opportunity to ask any questions and let you add on anything else if I didn't. I'm sorry again for not having the walk-off music on the
I
smoke
should have
machine.
given you like my blood type. No,
Yeah, Sheri, I would love for you to go ahead and add anything you want.
No, I just appreciate the opportunity. Like Matt said, I've been working for the 1st District Congressman for the last just over a year and a half. And truthfully, I've loved that job, but I knew it was time to walk away when this opportunity was presented to me. I've just been really impressed with what I've learned about the city. I appreciate and think it speaks highly of the council that you have these goals and you have these things that you want to do and you're willing to put the resources behind it. I just think that speaks really highly for how serious you guys are about what you want to do and what you want to see the city become. Like Matt said, I've got almost 15 years of planning and administration behind me. I went to graduate school in Idaho. I have a master's in public administration. I came into city planning a little bit non-traditionally. I don't have a background in landscape architecture or engineering. I had to do an internship when I was in graduate school, and I knew a city manager up in Cache Valley, and so I called him and they had me come intern, and then a year later they had some problems with their city planner, so they brought me on what they thought was going to be a year to fill in while they decided what they were going to do with that position, and that turned into 9.5 years with them. So I'm excited to live down here. I live in Layton, and I just moved down there from Cache Valley about 7 months ago. And it's been good. It's been busy. The last 3 weeks, I'm sure as you're aware with everything going on in the world, have been an incredibly emotional time with the congressman's office. And he's fully supportive. He promises not to be too angry at West Haven for poaching me. He actually said that he was looking forward to any opportunity that he'll have to work with West Haven. So you will have a good contact there, even though I won't be working there. But I'm just excited to hit the ground running. I had a really good lunch. The pizza was really good with the staff today, and I'm just really excited to be here. Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks.
We're excited.
Sheri, yeah.
I can put a face to Randy's name because I helped him when his son and daughter-in-law were in a pickle a few months ago.
But there was no conflict of interest. I wasn't
Yeah,
involved in the
zero
hiring
contact.
process.
Now I see. I see. Well, Sheri, we're really excited to have you. So welcome to the city, and
Thanks.
we hope that you love it here as much as we do.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're really invested here because we live here, but very excited to have you. So welcome.
And there are parts of Layton that we love and would love to have some of the things that they have, but we welcome
Talking
you
about
to
Chick-fil-A.
yeah, Chick-fil-A.
I know, right?
That's-
It's a good thing I'm on the south end of Layton.
But
spent
we
too
encourage you
much-
to drive around our city and become very familiar with the differences of West Haven versus Layton, and see how you can help better it.
A little more like Cache Valley.
Huh?
Yeah, yeah.
A little more like Cache Valley
Less
area.
late and a little more Cache Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
and I
that.
actually found out the other day, Mayor, I know your aunt and uncle.
I hope that's a good thing.
It is.
It kind of, no, it depends on which one. No, I'm just kidding.
Brent and Leela Johnson.
Oh, okay. Good people.
yeah.
Matt, is there any chance that the council could also maybe have a lunch with Sheri or some sort of casual?
I will never turn down lunch.
Well, I don't either, but
I think that would be a good thing. Particularly, I mean, this is one of those key positions where we want you to become very familiar with. I'd be happy to coordinate some of those. I know she will be involved in the meet the staff with the candidates for both mayor and the council coming up in a week or so. But we'd definitely like to get some FaceTime with you, so you can express some of your concerns and some suggestions. So we'll be getting her email set up very quickly, and I would be happy to have you sit down and go to lunch either as group or individual and set that up for you in the very near future.
yeah, that would be great. I'd love to.
Yeah,
Build
I'm
a
happy to
rapport.
do that however you're more comfortable. I had on my list of one of the things that Matt had me do was kind of a first 90 days. And I did have on there that at some point I would like to spend some time one-on-one with each of you, not only just to get to know you as an individual, but I know sometimes it's easier to discuss your personal concerns about things when it's just one-on-one. So I welcome that opportunity whenever you guys are available for it.
Great. We'll have Matt set something up.
Thank you so much, and welcome
Thank
to
you.
West Haven. We're happy to have you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on item 8, public hearing for the purpose of receiving public input on possible parking restrictions on the north side of 4225 South and 4250 South, otherwise known as 3450 West, in the Canterbury Crossing Subdivision. I would entertain a motion to leave the public meeting and enter into a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. We're now in a public hearing. Emily, let me start with you. Did you receive any emails? Okay.
Mayor, if it's okay, if I could just, I mean, they've seen a staff report, but before that, any comments, if it would be of value for me just to put a preface to the decision on it?
Okay, can the public see your slides at all?
Do we have anybody on Zoom that's
We
participating?
aren't on Zoom.
Not on Zoom.
Or on YouTube?
You can't participate on YouTube.
Yeah,
I know,
it's-
but we don't know who's viewing it then. Okay.
So we've, in your packet.
I'm sorry, Matt, did you answer my question? Can they see this?
Yes, they
Okay.
can. And we're waiting for, hopefully, our screens to.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
The premise of this discussion came from residents, particularly on 3450 West, that were concerned about parking of other vehicles across the street of them and impacting their ability to get in and out. We also had issues with, because of the width of this road, this was developed, and there's a little bit of a background on how it was developed. Originally, it seemed to be developed as a private development, but then all the roads became a public road as the development was finalized, and there's some legal connotations on that and actions that led to that. The roads are generally 26 feet wide on asphalt, which would not be our standard size roads. And generally, our building standards would require limitation or restriction of parking to only one side. As we received requests from 3450, we looked at the other roads and thought that it might be beneficial to restrict parking throughout this area. So we designated some restrictions on 3450 West and on the other road, and that would be I can't remember, I apologize, 3250 West, which are both the main collectors as this area goes down to Canterbury Crossing and such. 4225 and 4250 South has residents on both sides, which creates, becomes problematic and impacts property owners. And so we definitely didn't want to make any determination on those roads without council input. I've asked Dave Reed, our fire marshal, to come and just address that, provided him the staff report, and he drove the area. So Dave, do you want to just take a second before we open it up? Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Kind of awkward because I want to talk to you as much as I do them, but thank you, council. And so when Canterbury, Matt, I was going to ask you, I forgot to look it up when I was clicking on it. I was looking at different stuff. When was that built?
It was built about 15, 16 years ago.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yes.
So we're still under the IFC. So the IFC is the code book that we use.
Dave, I'm sorry, but will you resist the urge to speak to the public so that everyone can hear you?
Okay.
Thank you.
So the IFC, when it was adopted, changed over from the UFC, from the Uniform Fire Code to the International Fire Code. It's got an appendice that we've adopted, West Haven's adopted, and it goes over road widths and minimums and standards. So when that subdivision was developed, there was most likely an agreement with the HOA, and the HOA was supposed to limit parking at least on one side of the road. So what happens is when it becomes a public road, now I have to come to you and say, we still need to enforce the original agreement. And the original agreement is if it's less than 32 feet, but greater than 26, you can park on one side, but not the other. So I think that's what's happened is it's gone from an HOA to public streets. And so the IFC hasn't changed. It's adopted state law, so it's not, so when we adopt that as state law, we enforce it, and it's pretty hard to override what the IFC says. And so if we're at 26 feet on there, then we need to at least consider red paint on half of it, on one side or the other, wherever it's at. And the boundaries he shows would work for me. I would approve whatever the city proposed, as long as it worked within the code.
How do you choose which side to red paint?
So it's hard. I would rather work with the developer and do that. That's the ultimate way to do it. So when you have roads that have hydrants, some people want to red paint the hydrant side to keep the hydrants open. That's a good way to do it. My biggest concern is we need to have access to the hydrants. We need to get the trucks in, and West Haven has a ladder truck. You have the nicest ladder truck in northern Utah right now. It just came in. Hopefully it was there. You guys saw it? Really? Anyway, we need to make sure that ladder truck can get access into those roads. And in order to set up and to do a rescue or to do an elevated stream, we have to have so much width to do that. And so that's why if we have parking on both sides, then we're starting to risk not being able to have access, or even worse, well, that's bad too, but having access but not being able to set up our ladder for an imminent rescue. So those are the concerns that we have in public safety, so both fire and law enforcement. So my code kind of covers both. So
I have a couple questions, Matt, probably to you, and this is before your time, so I don't know if we can answer it tonight. But one, you made an assumption that the HOA was going to have one side of the street.
So it would have been in the plan review, correct? So
I'd like to find out if that was truly in place at that time, if that occurred, or if we're making a false assumption. I would like to understand that.
Okay.
And then two, when did these roads become public from the private, and what process took place there? And is there a process to have them go back to private roads if they weren't formally handed over as public roads?
I don't think there was ever an HOA
Well,
in that.
then how does
that
any of
may have
these,
been
how
part
do
of the
any of
plan.
these assumptions?
And I think the residents can probably answer that better, at least the ones that have lived there since then. But when I lived in the neighborhood, one side was HOA, the other side was supposed to be, but never actually happened. is the way I understood it, but I think there's probably some residents here that will probably be able to answer that better. And so when you talk about the HOA handing it over to the city, I don't know that that ever actually occurred.
Okay, so maybe they're still private roads.
Private roads.
That's what I'd like to
Do
understand.
you know that they're private
That's
roads,
what I'd like to
Matt?
understand.
I mean, do you know that they're not?
These are, these roads were dedicated, the formation of the subdivision went through some legal contest and was kind of forced upon the city. And so the sides of the roads and the public nature of them is part of that. I did not dive into that as part of this. This was more of saying we have roads that are 26 feet wide and there's some impacts. Like I said, our original indication was just to restrict the parking on the major roads that do not have residents directly living on them. So to try not to impact properties, but these other crossroads are still same width, and they do have that concern. And so I didn't get into the background on those, and would be happy to explore that.
Yeah, I'd like to
particularly
understand
with
that.
the input from the public hearing.
Okay, and also, Matt, I want to make sure we understand what the public hearing is, because it states in here that
It's specific on the roads.
specific on the roads at 4225 South and 4250 South, but I don't see any discussion on 3450, and I believe that should be there, as well as 3250. And so it almost seems like the public hearing is misrepresented there. That
It
we're
is on
saying,
the signs, Randy, with all four. I drove by there today, and
What's that?
all four signs are represented in the presentation that's on a placard there in the neighborhood. So all four of them are there.
Amy, how does that impact us with our discussion?
who put those placards up?
We did.
We
The
did,
city
the
did.
city
Okay, those
did,
are
so
city.
it's,
Okay.
so it sounds like those include all of the roads.
Which is what we talked about on the 18th when we discussed we wanted this to go to the a public hearing, was to have all of these roads included in that. But I'm only seeing that 2 of them are, and that's a concern to me.
And there are actually 5 that go east to west, and then plus 3450 west, which runs north to south, and
Well,
that's
there's
one of
only
the ones-
2 that are narrower streets, though. The
Well,
42
3450 is in parentheses.
Yeah, it is.
And
but
what does
doesn't make-
it say in
Biden's-
the advertisement? I mean, if it was advertised with all of these streets, and my understanding is in the staff report,
The map was included in the advertisement.
yeah,
Okay.
that you had on
if
your
the
staff
map was in the
report.
advertisement.
Then it doesn't
and
matter if it's on the
part of
agenda.
the staff report too, then I think you're fine to be able to move forward on all of those streets with the public hearing.
Okay.
Anything else, Chief?
No, I guess just one thought for Mr. Hunter is that regardless if it's private, regardless if it's public, regardless what the original thing said, the letter, we should find that, you're right. It can still be enforced.
Okay.
So even private roads throughout our
Absolutely.
city. can-
Absolutely, because people who live on
fire
private
safety.
roads still deserve the same protection and
Sure.
response that people that live on public roads.
Okay. So
So it doesn't differentiate.
I'm going to ask the question that I'm sure the public is curious about. Why are we even having a public hearing then if you're telling us what has to take place on these streets?
Because the
Because-
council asked us to.
Because we
Well,
asked for.
Yeah, but we didn't know the information that we know tonight. I agree we asked for it, but we weren't told that, well, it doesn't matter if you have one or not. I mean, in fact, I remember, Mayor, you said,
Fire marshal
well,
has asked.
you said, well, I would assume we'll follow the fire marshal's recommendations.
And I questioned.
These are different
right,
than
yeah.
recommendations. You're saying these are enforcements, not just, well, we recommend that you probably paint one side of the street. So I think we asked for this public hearing with, unfortunately, insufficient information.
But I think that this is good for the public to also hear, but I would like to hear what the public has to say as
Sure.
well.
Well, we've already opened it up to
Yeah.
them anyway.
We're in a
Yeah.
public hearing.
Agreed.
So yeah, I think that maybe if we would have understood it differently, but I would always like to hear what the public has to say, and I think this is a great time for you to hear it also, even though there might be a different
I'll be here,
requirement.
and if they have questions, I'll be glad to answer whatever I can.
All right.
And don't go far, but what I will have you do though, Chief, is if they bring up concerns that you'd like to address, we'll just note those and have you address those at the end, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Great.
All right.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
with that, if there's anyone in the public who would like to come forward at this time, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Okay, I'm Michael Sigmiller, and I live on 3382 West, 4250 South. This parking situation, there's only a handful of people that's causing the whole problem. There's a car parks in front of the fire hydrant all the time on the wrong way. The code enforcement come by, he doesn't give them no citation or nothing. Why don't, if the people have got extra cars, the ones that's causing the problem, there's a lot on 3450, or they can go up there and park where there's nothing that can be built. Or see if we can get Utah Power and Light to let us have a little piece of their property on the east side of our subdivision, and let us take care of that and have everybody that's got extra cars park up there. Because I don't want, there's 2 people on my street that have 3 or 4 extra cars, their garages are empty, but they like to park out in the road. But then you'll force them on our side. And I can tell you about the HOA if you want to hear about it.
We would like to hear about it.
Please.
Okay, it was with Mayor Mullaney. It was supposed to be on an HOA, but the city council, none of you guys were in it back then,
We were just babies.
had approved it for an HOA, but the HOA would cover everybody's roofs, sidewalks, and driveways if they went bad. And everybody'd have to take out what bushes you had in and fences to go along with whoever approved it. So we fought it. And we won. Mayor Mullaney dissolved it becoming an HOA because the contractor didn't plan it very well. They screwed up on the lots. And so that's why it's not a HOA. Okay. But there, like I said, there's only a few. There's one on the corner of my road. Her son has 4 cars, and he parks 1 on our street and 3 on 3450. The sheriff has 3 cars. He parks out in the road too, instead of parking in his driveway. I mean, there's only a handful, but it's like I say, if the fire marshal goes ahead with it, that's fine. I'll even be glad to ride with him and show him the ones that we're having problems with. He wants, I'm home all the time, I'm retired, but that's what happened to the HOA, because it wasn't meant. It was for a condominium complex instead of a housing complex, so that's why it got defeated.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Got any questions for me? And I want to tell you thanks, Matt, for the garbage. You saved us a lot of money.
Oh,
That was for
That was
public
the council.
presentation.
That was the council.
It really was the council.
Our first objective is to get us some restaurants, sit-down restaurants in our commercial area here in Farm Midland. Okay, all of our-
Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward?
Hello, my name is Rachel, and I live on
Can you state your last name, sorry?
Rachel Mansell, and I live on 3441 West, 4225 South. So that corner, and nope, other corner.
Other south
Yep,
corner?
right there.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure, I think I emailed Matt, and you said there weren't going to be any restrictions on my street, 3441 or 4225 South, right? But is that incorrect?
So when we first looked at it, we're like, it would be very easy to do 3450 and this one. And just
Now
because of the
it's-
width, we're like, if council wants to, here's this.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, that kind of changes what I'm going to say today, because I was under the impression that it was only going to be 3450. So just keep that in mind. But I don't think we should have any parking restrictions. If anything, maybe like a temporary parking or like a 4-hour limit. In the last city council meeting that I went to on August 18th, we mentioned that the 2 main reasons that we were pursuing this were complaints from residents and concerns that the fire trucks wouldn't fit down the streets. So I'd just like to address those two things. I was one of those residents that complained about cars parked on my fence line. It was just parked there for a really long time. I didn't know who it belonged to. So I reported it, and someone here at City Hall told me that West Haven has a 2-day abandoned car policy, but Weber County has a 7-day, so basically nothing was done, and yeah. But if we move to a 4-hour parking or temporary parking, you guys can maybe have more power to enforce the cars that are parked there forever, and it would still allow our guests somewhere to park. Okay, so the other thing is the emergency vehicles. On August 21st, there was an Amazon driver who had a medical emergency, and he pulled over next to my fence line and called for help. And fire truck and an ambulance came, and they were able to fit just fine. I'm not saying this is like proof, but he was able to fit just fine, even though there were 2 trucks parked on either side of 3450 West. So just something to think about. Like, maybe they will fit, and I don't know. But most importantly, I'd ask you to not restrict parking, because we use it as guest parking. Gene uses it when his grandkids come over at Christmas. I use it when my kids have birthday parties and their grandparents want to come. As you can see, there's like no parking in front of my house. If you park there, cars kind of might hit you when they turn onto the street. The extra parking is used for, there's some therapists that come for 2 little boys, grandparents, friends, neighbors. Anyway, I think, and the other thing I want to just say is, if we're going to do parking on 4225 South, maybe we should do both sides of the street, because I don't know. I just feel like the solutions were, it's just causing a lot more headache than I feel like the problem is solving.
Kim has a question for you, but that's
what's
the
your
end of your 3 minutes, so I'll cut you off.
So if you wanted to do both of them, tell me about that. If you did both of them, what benefit would that be to you if you...
Oh, well, I really don't have any say. It's mostly for my guests, because I park in my garage. But there's a rental house on that street that parks their cars everywhere, and both sides of the street, and it's...
So
I don't know.
Houses are using both sides of the streets so it's not just your side of the street that your side parks
Yes,
on.
and so the yellow line would be where you can't park, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know. Then they would park in front of my house, and then that would be like on the corner, and it's just, I don't know. There's just no good parking. I don't know. That's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Anyone else who'd like to come forward?
Oh, we're having discussions.
My name is Gene Funk. I live at 4233 South, 3450 West, and I'm one of them that called. And I called because that truck had been there for 6.5 weeks. I never moved, and the car had been there for 5. And I have a trailer. If I take it out, I can't get it back in. So it was a concern. But I'll tell you too, if I knew 5 years ago when I moved in there that there was going to be restrictive parking, I wouldn't have bought. Because there's not enough room for us to have our family over for Christmas. Because if I have my family over, there's 8 extra cars. And it just wouldn't be enough even for dinners. But the other concern I have is whether or not it's going to be restrictive parking or no parking. And if it's restrictive, is it going to be a 2 or 3 hour parking, or is it going to be no parking at all? Now I know in Roy on 2900, they painted the west side red, but they gave each household 4 passes. So they could put those passes in the windows and park in the red.
Which street is this on, sir?
On 2900, just before 4800. I think it's between 46 and 48. But if that would be an option that we could do,
so we can still have our family over and be able to park and have them stay there for 2 or 3 hours without a problem. My other concern is if you do make it restrictive or no parking, who's going to enforce it? Because right now I have a neighbor that keeps a truck out in front of his house. I've been there 5 years. It's been there 5 years. He moves it now and then, but it's not enforced when it snows because it comes down the road, pushes everything in my driveway, and then goes around his truck. So he's never received anything on it. And I think it's because he's the sheriff, but which kind of is a little bit irritating.
Lives in North Ogden.
But I don't think we really need restrictions or a no parking. I think we need, like these 4 passes you could give to each house along that street. And if somebody comes down, there's a problem, they look in the window, they know exactly whose car it is. We can move it immediately, but they know it's only going to be there 2 to 3 hours.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
If you have your 8 people there and your next door neighbor has his 8 people, what happens? Where do you guys go when they're all taken?
We can put 4 cars along the other side of me because there's no driveways on the other side of my house. None at all. It's just all fence.
I'm sorry, would you give me your address again?
4233 South, 3450 West.
Oh, okay. So you're on the side road. Okay, got it.
I'm on the side, the back of my house is the canal. But you can have 4 there. I can have 3 in front of my house and 1 more parks down past the corner. And that's the way we get them in.
Okay, that's 3 minutes unless anybody on the council has a question for Mr. Funk.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
I'll
you,
get
Mr.
out of here.
And,
Anyone else?
Sir, you were the one who came 2 weeks ago, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Oh.
appreciate you coming back, and
Here.
sorry for the misunderstanding on that last one.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm having palpitations. I'm nervous.
Don't be.
My name is Teresa Mckay, and I'm at 3443 West, 4250 South. First, can I just, because I've rewritten this about 50 times, and I'm nervous, can I just read it so I can
Absolutely.
put everything in?
Go ahead.
First, thank you for letting us have able to have a public response concerning the proposed restrictions. Hopefully, your decision's not a foregone conclusion. I'm speaking to 4250 South only because that's where I've lived for 15 years. And I was the first one on our street to move in when it was basically all dark on that street. As it stands now, we're allowed to park on both sides of the street. The proposed restriction would only allow parking on the south side, which is the side that I live on. Next door to me is also where the fire hydrant is, on that side. Some complaints, as I understand, have been parking on the sidewalk, using areas for long-term parking, cars on the street when snowplows are removing snow, and the possibility of emergency vehicles having access to where they can get into where they've been called to. Currently, there are ordinances already on the books for those particular parking restrictions. Personally, I have never seen where there was a problem. I think in the 15 years on our street, I've seen a fire truck and the emergency, the EMTs, come to my neighbor next door about 4 different times, and there was never a problem. As far as other cars being able to go around them, I haven't seen a problem. Our street is very short. You can actually see from one end to the end of the street. It's very short. When I moved to this subdivision, I moved there for several reasons. But honestly, I would not have moved there on that street had I known that there was going to be a restricted parking on one side. And I still don't understand why for all these years that the fire ordinance or whatever it is, law, is just coming up now, because now I couldn't move if I wanted to. I mean, for one, the housing and their houses are sky high, so. And I had a question too. If like somebody did put their house up for sale, would that affect somebody, a proposed or a potential buyer's decision on whether or not they even wanted to move there with no parking on, except for on one side?
Ms. Mckay, that's 3 minutes.
Oh, I must have said too many uhs. The main gist, but anyway,
I have a lot of notes from your statement.
I'm not for restricted parking, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see an added.
Anyone else?
Julie Johnston, 4440, nope, that's my West Point address. Not nervous.
It's okay, take a breath.
4184 South, 3450 West. And I live at the Point, and there's an empty lot across the street from me. A weed lot that my husband tries to keep the weeds out of. Can't they park in there? People across the street are the ones that are in our space all the time. Can't they park in there? Is there a problem with that? Anybody know? I know it's utilities. There's not going to be a house there.
Property.
In that little access way that goes towards the canal?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not
there's
set up for parking.
There's not a gate or anything.
Yeah.
It's just a utility.
Just an empty lot.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm. It's set up for eventually a trail connection and a bridge across the canal, but it hasn't been developed as that
fizzled
for
out
years.
with the HOA because
Yeah.
it all went bankrupt. Those were supposed to be patio homes. That's why the lots are so small and they're so close and there's no streets and we have no curb and gutter. I mean, if you pull off the road, you're going to be a little bit on the sidewalk. You are. I don't park over the sidewalk, but same thing. I think along the, I don't know what street that is, where the power lines, the big long street,
That's 3250.
3250.
Yeah.
I think that if everybody parked on the opposite side of there where it's yellow, then, if they had extra, they could park there, because there's no houses there. Rather than make it so they can't park there. Nobody walks on that sidewalk because it's so full of puncher weeds and thistle all the time that, sorry, it's kind of hideous along there anyway, so.
During busy times, have you seen cars park over on that side a lot?
Yeah, right there, at 4225 around the corner on that. There's always cars there. There's always cars across the street from me, always. Always. In fact, they finally had one towed away in front of me. It was nice. And I don't care about cars parking. People gotta park. They really do. I just as soon not have restricted parking either, but there is options. So, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Now I am nervous because I'm a newbie here. I'm only been here like 4 years. My name is Martin Lovato. I live at 4255 South, 3450 West. I have to try to remember my address. Now, I'm lucky.
Excuse me, was that 4250 South?
4255 South, 3450 West.
Thank you.
Now, I'm lucky because I don't have a lot of restrictions in front of my house, but I am single and I do have a large family, and I do like to.
I thought you were going to say a lot of friends coming over. Sorry.
Yeah, I do. I'm lucky. I've got 2 kids, and they've lived with me at time to time, waiting for their houses to be built, or I've had former in-laws live with me for a couple months while their houses are being built. I love family. I wish I had a bigger house and more room. Parking isn't a great issue for me right now, and I really feel for everybody. So I think if there is a way to enforce the parking problems that are being taken advantage of, sounds like there's a lot of cars that are left abandoned or not used or left there for a long time, I think that it would make sense to, make sure that that's taken care of. But I do know on 3450 West, across from my house, there is like a straightaway, and it's the side of somebody else's house. And when I have had people over, they've used that place to park. Now, of course, I think of anything, we want people to be safe, and we want to, enforce the law, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can. And like I say, I'm very nervous just even being up here, but I feel for the people, and myself included, that when you follow the rules and you do everything, that you don't want to be punished. And I feel like that's almost a punishment for me, because I'm the youngest of 7 kids. My father's a 96-year-old World War II Purple Heart veteran. And when he gets time to come out, I don't want to have to worry that I'm going to have to park, 4 or 5 houses down the road. But I'm lucky because at least I have a house. And he'll do it. We'll do it. But I just think for me, it would just make sense to enforce as many of the codes and the violations and go that direction. Because I really feel for anybody who lives on one of these streets that you have to decide if you're going to park across the street or in front of your house. But again, it's just common sense. We want to be safe, and we want to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves and taking care of our neighbor. So
Thank you.
it's simple,
Thank you.
but
Thank you.
again, newbie. So. Thank you.
I'm glad to have you here. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion to leave the public hearing and re-enter a public meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We're now back in a public meeting. And Chief, I just have one question for you. And that is, it was presented to the council 2 weeks ago that your recommendation was to have no parking in these areas. And I think Randy's question is that a recommendation, or is that something that we need to abide by?
So this is really a bad deal for the citizens, and I hate being the one that says you can only park on one side of the road. I am glad that the current council, the current planner, the way we do things now, we avoid a lot of these situations. This situation was created without any of us. None of us did this. And now we're left holding this. So now if I say, well, it's a recommendation, and then something does happen, heaven forbid, so it is hard. A fire truck probably can fit down if they're parking up on the sidewalks and doing all the stuff that they said. And I totally agree with the lady that said that. The only thing is, when a ladder sets up, our ladder's bigger than a fire truck, and it has to use outriggers to go out, and it puts out the 4 outriggers in order to stabilize it to get the ladder up in the air. So I'm at a conundrum where I don't like to punish citizens, but I've got to keep them safe. And that's really hard, because we really do. And when I say we, I mean us. We really do care about our citizens. And that's the pickle we're in. I don't know if this is something that we can go look at together. I'm not proposing to table it. That's your call. But I would be willing to do a lot more research and a lot of work to make sure that I propose the right option for you to agree with. I want to make sure we do it right. The citizens deserve that. And I'm kind of with you. It kind of got thrown on both of us. Right. And so I definitely don't want you blindsided. Right. And I don't think anybody meant to do anything like that.
No,
I think everybody's just concerned because how do we keep our citizens happy and safe?
Right.
And I don't know if we can do both.
Yeah.
If we can, I'm willing to do whatever I can to look at everything to see. There might only be sections of the road things gone. There might only be sections that we might have to paint red. There might be other sections we can leave open. So if we can keep an area to where we can keep it safe but not limit the parking for guests, then maybe it's a win-win. So, Mayor, I don't know if that's the answer you're
Well, I would
looking
appreciate
for.
you doing some more research, but the only thing I would ask, and I know this does put you in a bad situation, but it is your job.
It is.
And that is to come back to the council and either state that it's a recommendation or a mandate, because they're going to want to know that information.
And do you have that code? I think you referenced this as IDF or IFD.
IFC, the International
IFC.
Fire Code, which is adopted state law, and the cities can make certain things more restrictive, and we've worked on that. We've worked on new road policies and to make this better. And so I do know people up on this stand right now are trying to make sure this doesn't happen again. We had a builder that went in, this is an assumption, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. We had a builder that went in and he wanted to maximize the space. He get as many homes in there as he could because that's money. And now 15 years later, we're holding the bag. And sometimes what happens is we don't know of a situation. We don't know how bad I didn't know. So it wasn't like all of a sudden 15 years later, it's just now all of a sudden it's brought to our attention.
And I think that's key there, because I'm sure some people have called. We do have a new code enforcement officer, and so I just wondered if that's triggered some of this.
Might have been. He does a good job, so
because
maybe he's trying.
My concern is, let's enforce the codes and the ordinances that we have already in place. I mean, you can't park in front of a fire hydrant.
Correct.
I don't care if you restrict parking on both sides of the street. If somebody ignores that and parks in front of a fire hydrant, that's an issue for you.
Yeah, they can get towed.
Yeah, and so let's enforce those things. But what I would really like to understand is this IFC, is this a recommendation for these areas, or is this a hard code? And if it's a hard code, what do we as a city have to make an exception for that if we can provide safety? Again, 15 years in this area, these folks have lived there, and there have been no safety incidents. There has been emergency vehicles down there, probably some tight maneuvering that may have taken place, but maybe some of that tight maneuvering was vehicles that were parked where they weren't supposed to park anyway. You know, parking on the sidewalk, that's against the law, you know, and so we should be able to enforce that. Parking overnight is against law. But when I was asking about exceptions to that IFC, what we can legally do is that if you come back and say that is a mandate from this code, that if you have a street that's 26 feet wide or less, you have to limit parking on one side of the street. My question back to you would be, is that long-term parking, or does that allow for guest parking types of things where
it doesn't say where it allows any time parking. So from 20 to 26, you can't park on either side of the road. This is by the IFC.
Okay.
So we're trying to make it better in the future for West Haven, which is really good that West Haven cares and is doing that. From 26 to 32, if the road's between 26 and 32 feet wide, you can have parking on one side. Over 32, then it opens it up for both sides.
And what is this parking here, Matt? Or what's the street width on this?
26.
It's 26.
Asphalt measurements of 26. With roll. Asphalt measurement is 26, under 26 in some areas. If you count the rollover curbs, which immediately go into the sidewalk, you could say it's over 28, 29, just with that 1.5 feet on each side. But still, that puts it in that area where restrictions would be.
The other question I've gotten, I asked this 2 weeks ago, is I don't want to target this subdivision if this isn't our only subdivision that we have 26-foot wide roads in. Mm-hmm. And I'm quite certain we have other areas, whether they're PRUDs or HOAs of some sort or somewhere, where we've got those smaller streets. And I want to make sure that we're not punishing this subdivision because a code enforcement officer went down there and saw some cars parked on the sidewalk or something.
And we've reviewed several of those. I do not have the comprehensive list on there. Most of the ones that are this small are HOAs, which do have restrictions for one side parking. We do have a couple like that in Salt Point.
Painted?
Well, the one is under development right now, but it's already was stated this can only be a one-side parking. But I'll be able to finalize that list and get that out to the council.
Perfect.
I just have one follow-up statement and maybe a question for Amy that piggybacks on Randy's concern, and that is if you do come back to us, Chief, and say that the city's mandated to do this by code, then if we find an exception, does that put us at risk?
From a lawsuit from a citizen?
For a lawsuit from a citizen who is unable to be serviced by your department.
So you're saying if we don't do anything,
I'm saying,
and then we can't get
right.
a fire truck in there
Right.
and someone dies.
So if you come back and say there's a mandate and Randy's saying,
tell you who's gonna be
is
the
there an
number one?
adjustment that we could do, or is there some way that we could get around that? If we do try to get around that, does that put us at risk?
So when I do my research and we come up with an answer and I tell you where my answer came from and what I found out, the person that's going to get hung if something happens to one of our citizens is going to be me. Because if I come back and say it's a recommendation and it's not a requirement, if I say it's a requirement and then you don't do it, then then it's more on
That's
you guys.
what I'm asking.
Right. You wouldn't do that though. But if I come back and I say, oh, we can get around this, and then the next day that lady's little kid dies because we can't get in there, I'm toast.
Okay,
And
well,
so-
we're okay with that.
What's that?
We're okay if it's you.
So maybe that's a question for Amy. Dave is talking about a personal liability, but does the city have liability if we refuse to follow
code? I would say that you open yourself up for liability if you do not follow code and your fire marshal is saying this is what the code is and this is what needs to happen.
So I hope, Chief, that you can go back and find a creative solution to this. That's what I'm hoping.
I have another question.
Council, I will
Who
do
is
this.
supposed to be patrolling the roads? I mean, would this be Weber County Sheriff or
It's
roads
Weber
are-
County.
So yes, Weber County Sheriff has our parking enforcement.
So, I mean, this concerns me that they're having people park there, and it's not a place where you're going to go in a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our sheriffs are out there with a lot of area to cover, but I do think that we need to make sure that at least the laws are being kept with even on these roads. So,
And I think one of the reasons the code enforcement was sent out was a trailer being parked on one of the side streets for an extended amount of time, which is against code.
Mm-hmm.
And so he went out to educate and inform and saw the others and just reached out to those as well. And that, though I will say, while that triggered this most recent consideration, this street was brought to my attention right after I was hired about the restriction and the size of it. So it's not just this instance.
Right.
This has been, it's a simmering issue, and unfortunately just something that hasn't been brought to the spotlight full front.
all right, thank you.
Okay, you've got your homework.
I got my homework, Mayor, Council. I'll
If-
do my best to
Thank
find
you.
answers for you and
We
bring it back
appreciate
to
it.
you.
I will add, and I think that you know this just from listening to the residents, this is an area that is not often impacted by these issues. I think most people in this little triangle of West Haven typically park where they're supposed to park, in their driveways, in their garages. But occasionally you find this issue where people are parked on the sidewalks or long-term parking. If we can find something that is within whatever code we need it to be in, but also has the least impact to our citizens, that would be, obviously the best scenario for all. But I definitely don't want to. I feel bad that this issue, this small issue of a trailer, has snowballed into this essentially, and I hate to see that happen. But we appreciate any homework that you can do on that and bring us something back that has the least amount of impact to the residents, especially to their visitors. So be grateful for that.
And Matt, I would ask, relative to what Nina just said, that we don't engage in that as a city. If there's a violation, we go take care of the violation, but then we don't go door to door to see what parking issues they have or whatever it is. I think that's not upon us to be doing that. We go enforce code violations, and that's what we should do as a city, but we shouldn't be out inquiring as to what else may be wrong in an area.
And I don't think that happened.
I believe that's exactly what happened with this, because they went out to take care of a trailer that was parked there, and then additional inquiries were being gathered, and I think that oversteps our bounds of what we should be doing.
I still hold that he then reached out just to vehicles that he saw that were in non-compliance, parking on the sidewalks and other circumstances. There was no effort to survey the community and check it and get feedback on a door-to-door basis.
I think that's that's reasonably expected of him. I mean,
what is?
To address other violations.
If
he's out on, if our code enforcement officer is out on a weed call and he sees another weed patch, he's going to certainly do that.
Agreed. He should. If there's a violation, he should.
I mean, a lot of it
enforce
is, most of our code enforcement is complaint based. We understand that, but if something is noticed on the way, I think that's expected.
And I think that when it comes to parking on the sidewalk, I mean, even the residents tonight have said, well, just enforce the law.
Right.
Just enforce the laws that you have, and there shouldn't be an issue, right? So, in that case, we would want him to enforce that, but I agree, we obviously don't want him surveying the community.
Right. And just from emails I received, it appeared that took place, and I don't know that. That's an assumption. You know, I asked you, Chief, if what you said was an assumption, and mine I acknowledge is an assumption, but I want to make sure that we're not doing that.
Absolutely, I agree.
We really appreciate your willingness to work with us and help us maybe come up with a better solution. But it may come down that we have to obey the law, but at least let's see what we can do and enforce the laws we already have.
Absolutely.
So that people aren't parked there and,
Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to table the action on the public hearing. That would allow us to come back as a council and take action without having another public hearing.
Was that a so moved?
So moved?
I didn't hear you. So.
I will make
ask something, and
I will make a motion to table the action on the public hearing.
Okay, I have a motion by Carrie. Is there a second?
Second.
We exited
Motion
the
and a
public hearing.
That's what my question was, if we exited, and we
I thought we did. Thanks, Emily.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thanks,
coming.
Chief. Thanks to those members of the public who came. We appreciate your input.
And don't be nervous when you come to see us, because we're just your neighbors.
We're
We
just
live in
people
the
like
same
you.
communities, so come and talk to us anytime.
Email, call, please.
We love having you here.
Okay, we're on item 10, executive session. The council will enter into a closed meeting for the purpose of a strategy session to discuss the character and professional competence of an individual and pending or reasonably imminent litigation of an individual to be held in accordance with the provisions of Utah Code 52-4-205. I need a motion to leave the public meeting and enter into an executive session.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion